Today we're going to be talking about counseling center automation. And so we're going to look at a lot of the different programs you might want to use in your counseling center. But first, we need to decide what is it that you really need, and you need to make certain decisions before we even get started. And the first decision is, are you going to operate from a single computer? Are you going to operate from a network of computers? Or are you going to operate online, where all of your data and everything you have is being stored on a cloud, as they call it, or on the internet, because that is even possible today. And then the question is, what software do you really need? Now the point to the thing is, how do we relate this to God? We're to do everything as unto God, right? So we need to make good choices, and this one particular choice or two choices you're looking at today will make a big difference on how much time it takes you doing the stuff you don't really want to be doing. Because if you get the right software when it just flows together and you can do it, it'll take you very little time. If you take software that has problems, or if you take software that doesn't meet all of your needs, or if you take software that has too many bells and whistles and too many things, then you're going to have all sorts of stuff that you're going to have to go through and learn that you don't really have to know. So the first type of software that you need is you need something that's called billing software or medical software. And this is where you keep track of all the money that comes in, all the money that you spend, also your counseling records, because you have to keep track of who you have that comes in, if you saw that person, how much you charged the person, how much the person paid. And this gets more complicated when we now add in billing to insurance companies. And then if we get to electronic billing to insurance companies, it even gets more complicated. So you need some software to handle that. Now, if all you're doing is private pay, then you might be able to get away with just a spreadsheet of just keeping track of who paid and who didn't pay and so on and so forth. But another thing to take into account here is, okay, you might be only doing that now, but what are you going to be doing next year and the year after that? Unfortunately, with a lot of this software, you can't really take it from one type of software and move it to a different type. You pretty much have to start over and retype in all of your information, all of your clients, and so on and so forth. And the next type is scheduling software. Now realize there are some ways around this, that Microsoft Access can do scheduling, Google Calendar can do scheduling, or you can use Excel to just make up your own schedule and just change things. So there are ways of getting around the scheduling, but it's probably nicer to have the scheduling built right into your software. And then the final thing is accounting. Some of the billing software actually has accounting built into it, and some of the rest of it doesn't have accounting built into it, so you'll need another program. And wouldn't it be nice if the one program interfaced with the other program? Well, they don't necessarily do that, but there are some cases where that is the case. Now, the first thing we need to do is decide what is going to be our criteria for our billing software, because that's the first thing we're going to look at. I'm going to suggest some criteria for you. You can come up with your own, obviously, and you probably should. The first is, we want the least complicated software that will do the job that we can get our hands on. But it needs to do the job, and it needs to do it effectively. Secondly, it needs to meet our need for expansion in the future. See, what if I only get software that will handle one provider, and now we have 3 providers in the office? They either have to operate independently, and we have to put it all together again, or we need to have some way that we can network it together. Another is the company making the software stable and going to be around for a long period of time? Let me give you an example of what can happen. Many years ago, there was a new startup that was making billing software. And because we would even offer to do beta testing for them, they actually gave it to us for free. And we continued working with them, and we got to the place that we got it down where there only were 2 or 3 major errors still in the software. And he decided they weren't making enough money, so they shut down. So then where are we? We can't get anything fixed in the software. We have no programmer to go to do anything to figure anything out if it's not working right. And we have to work around it. And all of our data is sitting in that software and it can't be moved anyplace else. So we have to start all over with another type of software. Not only that, because the software was only on XP, we now have to stay on an XP computer because we have to keep the old software sitting there in case we have anything that comes up about previous clients. And we had to take the amount they owed on the old software and figure out some way to put it into the new software for ongoing clients. So you can see sort of the problem you run into when you are just doing it the cheap way. But you'll have to make those decisions for yourself. How about price? Wouldn't it be nice if all you had to pay for was the initial cost of the software and it was totally supported forever and it was always taken care of and they provided all upgrades for free? Wouldn't that be nice? But it's not the truth. In fact, in most cases, you're going to see that we're going to have to pay an initial fee. We're also going to have to pay some setup fees. We're also going to have to pay some additional fees for any additional providers, and we're probably going to have to provide some money also if we want to continue to have tech support. In fact, there are even some of them that will totally shut you off if you don't pay your tech support fee. The software will quit working. Of course, if you're going to do anything in the way of insurance, you're going to have to be able to either print the 1500 form, or you're going to have to be able to do electronic billing. And of course, if you do electronic billing, you're going to come under HIPAA that we talked about earlier. Here are some rules. Don't buy it based on features alone. There are a lot of features you probably don't even need. And they're just going to be cumbersome or going to be a problem to you. Don't buy it based on popularity, because you need to buy it based on what your needs are and what you're going to actually be doing here. If you can't try it, don't buy it. All of these except one that we're going to be talking about will allow you to download a demo. And we'll be talking about going through demos because you need a feeling for this software as to what you like and how intuitive it is for you. Can you run it on your existing hardware? Different types of software and complexity require bigger and bigger computers, and as you know, all software gets bigger and bigger and bigger these days. Do you need to have it on an overall system? Some of the software will only work on individual computers. Other of the software is going to work on systems, and of course some of the software is going to work on the internet. Now, what's the advantage of the software that works on the internet? If you have the type of job where you're going around and visiting people at home, as an example, you can just hit the internet and type your notes in any place you are, from your car, any place you are. And of course, they supposedly guarantee that it's all secure and guarantee that they're backing it up and so on and so forth. But where is all of your data? Sitting on somebody else's computer someplace. So a lot of people don't like that kind of an idea unless you have the kind of a practice that you're going from church to church, or you're doing other things, or you have multiple sites. Can you see that if you have multiple sites, it would be very nice if everyone can be going to the same computer program, putting all their data in, so you have it all integrated together. And we'll look at some of those also. Another big question is, how is the support delivered? One of the programs we'll be talking about only does it by email. In fact, I tried calling their phone, and guess what? It's out of service. So you can't even get them by phone no matter what. And how fast do you think they respond to the email? Not very fast. Is support available on weekends or evenings? These are all things you're going to have to sort out and decide what you really need, and it's all based on what? It's based on your needs. So the first thing you're going to have to do is figure out your needs. Let's start with billing workflow. How do you like to operate? The way we operate here is we bill insurance every other week. We post incoming payments in our session notes every day. We calculate what people owe us every other week, the opposite weeks that we bill the insurance companies. And we pay and do our accounting monthly. So just from that structure, you have an idea of what you need in the way of software. How about features? Well, these are the minimum features you need. The first is someplace where you have the client information. And attached to that are your client notes and your counseling plan. If you're taking insurance, you need to be able to bill insurance. In all cases, you need to bill invoices, and we send people bills that look pretty professional from your organization. Actually, for a long time, because we had some software that wasn't working in the billing, that we were just using hand bills, which didn't look very professional. You need something that tracks your billing and the amount owed. Otherwise, you're going to be doing this all by hand. You need some way of scheduling. You need some way of profit or loss accounting. If not, you'll have no idea whether you're losing money, you're making money, or how things are actually working out. And if you have, even with yourself, you need some way of doing payroll. Now, obviously, this is different if you have somebody that's an employee. Now we have a whole lot of complexity to your payroll. Or if you have contractors, it's less complex. And all of this in a very rudimentary way can be handled without software, but it's going to take a lot of time. And so we recommend you do at least get the most basic software to have some way to handle all this. And then once you get all of that, that's going to narrow down which software packages you might be interested in. But probably the main thing that's going to narrow it down is cost. So we can eliminate a lot of them just based on cost. Because a lot of these packages are made for the medical community and for doctors. And how much do you think doctors might invest in their software? And how many bells and whistles do you think they want on their software? See, do you need an automatic function like on one of these softwares that will allow people from their home to contact their doctor? Or an automatic function for doing prescriptions? Those are all built into some of the software that is primarily made for doctors because it covers all of their needs. So the first thing you do once you get your criteria is you then download some of these demos. And here's some ideas of dealing with demos. In these last few weeks, I've looked at quite a few demos and played around with them. The first thing you want to check on the demo, is this logical? Can you figure it out? See, I won't read their manual or any of that kind of stuff. I'll just start playing around with it and see if I can just make it work and it's all logical and I can find all the different functions. And guess what? Yeah, for the very rudimentary software, you might be able to do that, but the more complex you get, the more you can't figure it out. You're looking all over the place to trying to see how you're going to make this thing work. Do you like the way it feels? Is it the way you like to operate? You shouldn't have to check the manual for every step. And of course, look at the manual. Is it quick and simple to use? Do you have all the features that you need? Or do you have more that you don't need? Call the support. Is it courteous and prompt? Or does it even exist? What kind of error checking is built in? See, the more complex you get, the more error checking is built in and the less errors you're going to make. We just started using a new software package that has no error checking. How many problems do you think we've run into? We've had more rejects on our billing to insurance companies probably in the last 6 months than we've ever had in the entire time we've been here. Because this software checks nothing. And so then the insurance company finds different errors and keeps rejecting it. Can you make corrections easily? The suggestion is, don't just take what they give you in the way of examples, but stick in some of your own clients, examples and so on, and play around with it and find out what it really does or doesn't do. Does it take care of secondary insurance? These are all catches that we found looking at different software packages. The 7 deadly mistakes of software selection. You need to listen to these so you don't make these same mistakes. Buying popular software without evaluating it yourself. Basing your purchase solely on the listed features. These are all the mistakes. Buying without evaluating the stability of the software company. He already gave you an example of that. Because the real cheap software usually has one programmer who is doing all the programming themselves. Buying based on the initial cost without considering the ongoing maintenance costs or the upgrade costs. Buying software without defining your own requirements. Buying software at the start of its life cycle. They're just developing this, because when they're developing it, how many errors are there going to be? And how long it's going to take before they get their act together? Buying software without evaluating the support offered. Those are the 7 deadly mistakes. So now we're going to talk about different software packages, and we're going to start with the most simple, fundamental, and we're going to talk about specific packages, not generalities, so you can get an idea of the kind of problems. Now, in this first package, we violated all the rules. And the reason we violated all the rules is, one, we didn't want to spend the money, but 2, because of what we're doing here, most of you starting are going to want to have the cheapest software you can get your hands on. It's called Confidence Software. We're using it right now because we want to see if it's good enough for you to use. Total cost $189 with no other fees or requirements. And it allows you to download the software on up to 5 computers. What does that mean? I'm not sure it's completely cricket, but you could actually split this software with somebody else and load it on 2 computers for you, and they could load it on 2 computers for them. It's brand new software that is just being developed. In fact, there are a lot of modules they don't even have at this particular point. Tech support is only by email, and it sometimes takes weeks for them to respond. Now, you'll get back an immediate thing as saying, we received it, but then you probably won't hear from them, or they'll say, well, we'll take a look at it, and they eventually will get back to you at some point. This is a company whose phone was turned off. So you can't get a hold of them except by email. The manual is extremely basic, meaning it just basically gives you a few ideas how to do things. It doesn't go into depth and anything else. And when you hit help on the program, it says, look at the manual. The good thing is it's a very simple program, and so you can go around and just try everything and look at all the options, and then you figure out everything you've got and how to make it work by trial and error. We found some errors in the software. One of the errors that's a real pain at this particular point is that when you're putting in money that is paid from the insurance company, there's a write-off, and you can do a write-off. Well, it turns out that when you now look at that particular page, it takes the write-off into account. But if you print the bill, it doesn't take the write-off into account. So you get a different amount on the bill when you print it than what it's showing you on the page. And so you have to manually add in all the write-offs onto the other numbers. The 1500 form, when it prints a second form after the first one, unless you put in only page 1. And if you change the margins all change back. So you have to reset the margin every time you print a form. Batch processing does not exclude clients that have no insurance. So we haven't really figured out a way to be able to use it at this particular point, which means we have to bill each individual client to the insurance company instead of just running a batch here. It doesn't do secondary insurance, which means in secondary insurance we're going to have a separate situation. It doesn't do electronic billing. We didn't expect it really would. Here's a biggie. It doesn't have a spelling checker, which means when you're writing all your notes in, I hope you know how to spell. Because it's not going to check your spelling for you. So in all of your client notes, you could have all sorts of spelling errors. You have to put in the client on every different function. So the functions are sort of separate. Like if you're billing, you have to put in each individual client. You can't then switch to client information, or you can't switch to making 1500 forms every time you have to go and select the client again. It has a built-in trap. This is another one of the little catches that we ran into. See, how are we going to go and move our money, the amount they owe, from the previous program to this one? Well, it doesn't add anything up, so what we have to do is take that bill and make the bill for the first session really, include how much they owed previously to get it to work, right? Well, guess what? If you bring it up and you're looking at that previous session, and now you say, select next session, it will take that data and stick it in the next section, which means we sent out a bunch of insurance bills with very large amounts in there, like we were billing them like for one session $450. And so we have to check that now and everything. See, it doesn't check any of that. And even when you put in money, you have to do all the adding yourself. Like if they have paid a certain amount, the insurance company's paid a certain amount, you have to add those all together and put them into the total. It won't add those together for you. So to understand, this is a very basic program. Have you figured that out by now? It doesn't have any table of standard fees. So when you have the first time the client comes, if you don't type in the amount of your fee, it shows 0. On insurance, it doesn't have insurance companies listed in a table, so you have to type in all the information for each insurance company for each client. There's no checking done for errors on anything. It'll print out if you don't put the person's birth date in, if you put the wrong for the insurance and say it's not the person's self, it's their spouse, it doesn't check any of that. So any errors on there, you're going to be responsible for. But the good news is there are workarounds to all of these different problems, and once you learn how to use it, you can make the software work. And if you're very careful of what you do, for this rudimentary software, it will take care of everything you need, including insurance billing and all of the kind of things for the overall function. So it has all the functions you need for a beginning center. But remember, if you do this and then you're trying to add in more providers, or you're trying to network, or all those kind of things, it won't do any of those things. Now the hope is what? As they get their act together, all these problems are going to get fixed, and the software will become more sophisticated, and it will become better as you go along, and you'll get your updates for free and so on and so forth. So eventually you'll have a decent package here. But for right now, do you see the problems with startup packages? Because you get to do their beta testing for them, don't you? You get to figure out all the different errors and all the different problems. But if you don't really like to mess around with software and do very much, then this is a very basic package that you could use. The next one we're going to look at is probably one of the most popular ones, called Therapist Helper. And it's going to do for you most of the things that you need. We'll have some other ones that are actually even better than this, but the price tag is going to go up very significantly. The basic Therapist Helper is $599, but then you have to buy support every year for $329. And they'll actually put their software on 2 of your computers, even 2 network computers initially for that $599. But every additional computer is $250, and every additional therapist is $125. And then they have add-ons. If you want electronic billing, that's $75 plus $10 per month plus 27 cents per claim. If you want to take credit cards, that's $250 plus fees. But stability, 18,000 users. So therefore, this is well thought out. There's tremendous amounts of training and groups that you can join and everything else. You can even get your CEUs through them for using this software. And there are all sorts of video courses that you can take and watch that will show you how to use the software. Some of my observations in using the software: therapy notes are sort of nondescript, meaning that it's just a blank page. You have to type everything into the blank page. Where we're going to find some software later on is very elaborate in that way. You can select all the data that goes on your page and set your formats and do all of those kind of things. It does allow tracking of all types of billing. What do I mean by that? It will take into account what the copay is, and it will go bill the individual person for the copays and the insurance company for the insurance and the write-off for the write-offs, and take all of those things and take care of it. The library that it has for your codes, for your diagnostic codes, is a medical library, which means you have hundreds upon hundreds of codes, and so you're going to have to plow through that to find out where the codes are you're going to be using. It has a good help system. There are things in it that you don't need, like it even has a zip code library to look up people's zip codes for insurance companies. I believe it even has medical prescriptions. So there are things that you don't need there. You can track and print all your billing at once. It does have electronic billing at an extra cost. It's HIPAA approved. Now here's a good thing: it exports to Quicken and QuickBooks. So if later on you're deciding you're going to use Quicken and QuickBooks, the data will go directly from there to your QuickBooks, as an example. It has a lot of libraries that you need to keep up. Moderately complicated to find all the functions. I believe it does have a spelling checker. You can even charge or not charge for canceling sessions. It works for a solo practice or for multiple practices or for networks. It has ledgers so you can see everything at once. It's more complicated, but it's definitely much more capable. I would say it's probably 3 times more complicated than the Confidence software, but it's more capable and does all the things you need it to do, even some things you don't really need it to do. So that's number 2 as we grow in complexity. Number 3 is called A+ Delphi. That's A+ and then DELPHI. And it's been around about 20 years. And it's a fairly complex program that covers a lot of things. Now the cost originally sounds like it's higher, but when you take into account long term, it's probably lower. It's $895 for the software, $100 a year for the maintenance, and $100 to set up each network computer. But in the long run, it will probably be cheaper than the helper. It has tremendous progress note formatting. You can set your progress notes up to look exactly how you want to include one of about 50 different things on your progress notes that will take out of your data. You can do individual billing, but it has a queue. So every time you have a client and every time you do something, it automatically sets the whole thing up to be billed by batch processing to the insurance company. It has medical billing statements, which means that your statements look like they come from a doctor's office. It says specifically what it is and how much it is and so on and so forth. It has full ledger accounting, which means you don't need QuickBooks or some other program. It basically does all of your accounting built right into the program with profit or loss. There is no charge for electronic billing. It uses a program called Office Ally, which is a free electronic billing company that is paid for by the insurance companies. It has wonderful tech support. You call, you get the programmer, and he'll help you any way he can. So it just has tremendous tech support. It's a little bit more complicated, a little bit less friendly to use than the Helper. Here's some statements about it. Adelphi is an on-premise billing, scheduling, and patient records management system designed specifically for a small medical or behavioral health practices. It's very popular among small private practices, and we feel comfortable to recommend it to practices ranging from 1 to 5 providers. The vendor reports that roughly 50% of its customer base is solo practices, 40% group practices, and 10% are billing services. It includes flexible fee schedules, patient statement generation, batch insurance, claim submission, scheduling, customized progress notes, and customized face sheet. It's been around, as I said, about 22 years. So do you see, that's a step higher, but you notice we go in this step higher is what are we getting into? Medical billing. See, this one is good enough for a doctor billing as well as mental health billing. So it's going to have some more complexity in it to take care of all the needs that a doctor has. So those are the 3 that are sitting in your computer in your office. Okay, now we have a very interesting one, because now we're going to the internet ones. And this one is called PracticeMate. And guess how much it costs? It's free. Now what's the catch? The catch is PracticeMate is from Office Ally. So you have to use Office Ally, meaning you have to do electronic billing and HIPAA. But if you do, they will provide you a rudimentary software program for free. There are some extra costs if you want them to print and mail all your bills for you. But for billing the insurance companies and so on, it's all free, and they provide you the software for doing everything that you want to do here. But again, this is more of a rudimentary package, but it's much more complex, and it works on the internet. So you can again go any place around and use this directly from your laptop. It's relatively new, and it's set up for medical billing. What does that tell us? We're going to have a bunch of stuff on here again that is really for doctors. It does work with the Clearinghouse Office Ally. It has a scheduling module that's very elaborate with color codes and all sorts of things and appointments. And it actually works better for mental health because it doesn't allow you to have different providers with different schedules, but the overall schedule, like 45 minutes, you can set that all up and it'll take care of everything. Appointment intervals are adjusted globally, that's what I'm saying, not by the provider. You can set up default procedures and diagnosis codes in PracticeMate, meaning that you can just cut down the list to the ones that you need or the ones that you're using. Entering charges, payments, and apply those payments requires a lot of heavy lifting, is what the analysis of this one says, meaning there's quite a bit of different panels that you need to take and click on. So it takes some more work to do all the things you want to do. claims processing in PracticeMate's well integrated with Office Ally and intuitive and very easy to use because it was built by the electronic billing company. It has the basic production reports and some charts. Appointment and deposit reports are adequate. Reports cannot be customized, and unfortunately several reports are missing some key information. There's no report that contains all the data you need to verify the accuracy of your data entries. It has a login and password, but it doesn't have anything where you can have individual users have different rights. It's a very good choice for a very small practice. And of course, the hope is what? They get their act together too. This again is a fairly new type of thing, but the option is if you are doing medical billing or if you're doing billing to insurance companies and you're willing to do HIPAA, then this is a whole free package that you could get and at least try and start working with. There are no costs and no additional things that you have to do. Now the last one in this series we're going to look at is called Clinical Source, and it is totally set up for working on the internet. And again, it's a medical billing package. The charge is per month. There are no additional charges, but it's $89 per month. That means you're paying almost $1,000 a year for your software, but they do everything for you. You get all your setup. They keep your records. They back up your records. They do everything for you. All you have to do is type your stuff in. So your SOAP notes, your therapy billing, and you can do it from any place you want to, including your BlackBerry or your iPad or your cell phone or any of those kind of things. So you can do everything any place you go, and you don't have to be keeping your own records. They're all available to you. And if you decide to change, then they'll back up all your data and ship it to you. Here are some of the things it does. Manage appointments and view schedules. Enter documents like SOAP notes with ease. Manage patient records as per HIPAA compliance. Therapists can enter treatment logs for each patient. Send accurate claim submissions with therapy billing software. Preloaded goals create care plans. This is the one software that has a complete care plan where it has all sorts of things you can just select from a whole menu and set up all your treatment plans and everything else. So it is very good treatment planning software where most of the rest of them don't. Keep a track of outstanding balances. Easily manage your payroll. So on this you can even do the payroll for the therapist. You can go paperless. You can even upload and scan in all of your documents. And you can go mobile and access your library software via iPhone, iPad, or BlackBerry. There's no setup fee or starting. You can just go and sign up and do it, but you're going to get charged that $89 per month. And of course, and they also have good backup and all of those kind of things. So there are the 5 packages that I chose to really look at because they're different levels sort of what you might want to look at. So let's look at them just for a second and now compare them one with another. Okay? So we're looking at Confident is going to be about $189 maximum. When we get to Helper, it's going to be about $900 to $1,000 the first year. After that, it'll be the $329 every year. Delphi is higher, the $895 plus $100 a year, so $1,000 for the first year approximately, but then only $100 per year. PracticeMate, if you're willing to go that way, it'll all be free. And Clinical Source will be about $1,000 a year ongoing. So you can see how some of these and the money sort of balances out and you end up paying about the same amount for all of them except for Confident, which is the cheapest and of course has the most problems. What are some of the things you really ought to think about? One of them, if you're going with Confident, it's only going to do one person. If you have more than one therapist and so on, that's going to be a problem. You better know how to spell. I did get an email from the person there and he said, well, they're going to have to change probably to a different platform before they can add spelling checker into it. And you got to be very careful on all the stuff you're doing. You're probably going to have a lot more errors if you go the cheap way. And remember, there's no way of taking that data and moving it to a higher level at some point. Probably in my evaluation, if we look at Helper and Delphi, they're about the same as to overall competence and overall ability and so on, where Delphi probably has a little bit more in the extra medical stuff in, so it's a little bit more complex. You just need to take them both and play with them and decide which one you really like the best. And of course, Practice-Mate and Clinical Source is all based on if you're willing to put all your data on the internet and trust it all to be secure and trust them to have all your data and process it all for you. But the big advantage is if you're this person with this laptop or this BlackBerry or iPhone and you want to be able to do all your stuff and not be cumbered down with a bunch of records and all this stuff in your office, they'll take care of it all for you. But the other thing we have to look at now, okay, let's say you take one of these packages that does not have accounting. We said primarily Delphi is the only one that really had the complete accounting built into it. I don't think Practice-Mate does. It has some, but Clinical Source probably has it built into it. So you're going to need an accounting package also. So now we're going to look at the accounting packages and see what's available. Now the ones you probably already heard of before are Quicken and QuickBooks and maybe Microsoft Money. Now, I'm not going to look at Microsoft Money because one of the analysis that I looked at showed that Quicken was significantly better than Microsoft Money doing what we want it to do. And the idea is what? Quicken has Quicken for Business. And that's a particular model we're going to compare here with QuickBooks, and then we're going to compare it with Peachtree, because those are your three basic ones. We use Peachtree here, and the main reason we use that is because the church uses it. So we have to integrate with the church. So if your church is already using an accounting package, you're going to have to use the accounting package that your church is already using to integrate with them. So what are some of the things between Quicken and QuickBooks? They're both by the same company. Lots of complaints about support. Another huge complaint about them. In all the software in this area, every 2 to 4 years, they quit supporting the previous software and you have to buy it all again. So you're going to get hit up over and over again for this software, but that includes all three of the programs that we're looking at. So here's sort of a comparison, and you can decide, and we're going to be able to hone this down to decide which one you want to do. Quicken is easier to learn and simpler to use. QuickBooks has many more features and options, but the truth is most of the features that QuickBooks has, you're really not going to be using. Quicken is fine for simple checkbook-based income and expense records. QuickBooks allows single entry or double entry bookkeeping, but most small companies do single entry anyway, so you really don't need the double entry bookkeeping. Quicken has plenty of reporting capability for most users. Limited capability to export to Excel. QuickBooks has more extensive reporting capabilities, standard accounting practices, spreadsheets, and so on. Quicken allows using the classical different codes with the many more multi-level codes in QuickBooks. Now here's some of the ones you need to think about. Quicken does not have an inventory system. So if you need an inventory system, as an example, you have a bookstore like we do. You won't have that with Quicken. You have no way to keeping track of your inventory. Quicken has no payroll system. I think there may be one advanced one that does have some payroll. You either need inventory or you need payroll. You probably need to go to QuickBooks. Limited support for invoicing and receivable. QuickBooks basically has all those different things. Quicken is single version only, where QuickBooks can be using and multi-users up to 5 at the same time. If you want to do Quicken, which is much easier to use, you can do that for a while, and there's a function where you can take all of your data from Quicken and move it to QuickBooks. But guess what? There's no function to go from QuickBooks back to Quicken. So you can get it, and of course price differences, we're talking less than $100 for Quicken, over $100 to $200 probably for QuickBooks, depending which one you want over the overall thing. So it depends on, if you have employees and you need to do payroll, especially if you're a for-profit, you need QuickBooks. If you need inventory, you need QuickBooks. If you need to do more business things and reporting, you need QuickBooks. We have one more to look at, and that is Peachtree. And again, these are in levels. Simplicity is Quicken. Next level is QuickBooks. Much higher level is Peachtree. In fact, Peachtree will go for any size of company. And of course, they've all been around for a long time. There are major complaints about their product support and all the other kind of things for all of these companies. So we really can't sort them out. Peachtree is designed specifically for small businesses. You have 4 software packages to choose from: Pro, Complete, Premium, and Quantum. It ranges from $229 to $2,450. But again, there's so many features and so on that you have. One of the things we like about Peachtree is one of the things is they have a report that basically gives us all the money we took in, all the money we put out on every month, and then it adds it up for the entire year. So every month we just compare what's going on this month with the previous year, and it adds that all up and keeps that all for us. Of the 4 Peachtree packages, some of them are even set up for particular type of businesses, like there's one for nonprofits. I believe you also can get that with QuickBook. But the thing about nonprofits, a lot of that has for donations and that kind of stuff, and we don't have many donations. But if you're working out of a church, guess what they're going to want? They're going to want to have either QuickBooks or Peachtree, and probably the nonprofit version, to take care of all of the giving that they have and monitor all of those kind of things. Peachtree has real double entry accounting principles, in-depth audit and security functions to protect your data, customized dashboard and management centers, strong inventory management that keeps your bottom line going. What does it really come down to? Peachtree is a total program for a small to a large company that's going to have everything you could ever want or everything you ever need, but with all those functions, it's going to be much harder to use than the Quicken or the QuickBooks. So let's do a comparison here a little bit. We're talking about Quicken, $59.99 if you download it, $63.98 if you want the DVD. QuickBooks is $134 to $235, and Peachtree is $239. But if you go to their higher level things that they have, it goes up to $24.50. Of course, none of them do any of the electronic billing or any of those kind of things we're talking about. They primarily are just monitoring money coming in, money going out. You have inventory in your QuickBooks and your Peachtree. So basically, this is just how you're taking care of your business, and you still are going to need your billing software to go along with this. So what are my recommendations on this whole thing? Well, first thing is determine your short-term and long-term needs, because you're going to make the determination based on what you really need and what you're going to use these things for. Figure out how much you can afford a year. You may not be able to. If you're just starting out small, you may have to go with confident and put up with some of the problems until they get them fixed. And hopefully the company does not go under, so you have to go to somebody else eventually. Do your own research. I've given you my research. I'm not guaranteeing you everything I said is completely accurate, because there may have been some ways I couldn't figure out. There may be some things that I didn't understand or I didn't know. So I'm not saying that's technically accurate, but get some demos and play around with them and decide what you really need. Try it yourself and work it through and pray a lot. As I said, this is going to make a big difference of how much misery you're going to have in your counseling center, or how fast and rapid it's all going to go, and you're going to have it all together, and you're going to skip a lot of headaches that you don't need if you pick the right software. Let's pray. Lord God, I pray that you would give us wisdom You've already given it to us, Lord God, and that we would use it, Lord. And in each of these decisions, even though they seem very secular, Lord God, but since we're working for you, we ask you would lead us into the things that we need that will work for us. And we give you all the glory and the honor in Jesus' name. Amen.